Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Malang City. Welcome to the Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University. We are delighted to welcome you to the opening ceremony of the first International Conference on Multidisciplinary Applications of Information Technology, ICOMIT 2022, one of the FILCOM conferences in 2022 under the theme of the multidisciplinary application of information technology for better living in the post-pandemic era. This conference will be held in hybrid. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Ristika Kurnia Nestiorini. I'll be your master ceremony this morning. Before we proceed to the program today, we would like to welcome the General Chair of the ICOMIT 2022, Mr. Rizwan Septriayadi Sianturi, PhD. Next, we would like to welcome the Dean of Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University, Professor Wayan Firdaus Mahmudi, PhD. Also, welcome to our excellent keynote speakers, Don Owens, PhD, from the University of Texas at Dallas, USA, Professor Loring Marton from Sapientia Hungarian University of Transylvania, Romania, Professor Hiroki Tamura from the University of Miyazaki, Japan, and two presenters and participants of the ICOMIT 2022. It is nice to have you here in the scientific meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference provides an excellent opportunity for the prospective participants to share their current theoretical knowledge, research findings, and experiences for better living in the post-pandemic era. This conference will be featured presentation by international speakers with cutting-edge sessions topics. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, we would like to invite the General Chair of the ICOMIT 2022 to the podium to deliver a welcome speech. Please welcome Mr. Rizwan Septriayadi Sianturi, PhD. Give a warm applause.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, participants. Welcome to Malang City. Welcome to Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University. We want to extend our warmest welcome to all participants of the first International Conference on Multidisciplinary Applications of Information Technology, ICOMIT 2022. Due to the safety reasons and travel restrictions caused by COVID-19, ICOMIT 2022 will take place online in a live stream. Ladies and gentlemen, with the successful story of other conference series of the Faculty of Computer Science in the recent 5 years, we are committed to preparing another conference program, ICOMIT 2022, to foster vibrant exchanges and dynamic collaborations among researchers, graduate students, business entrepreneurs, practitioners, innovators, representatives of indigenous people and faith community, and policymakers. We are pleased to have outstanding scholars and practitioners as conference speakers to share their insight across varying areas in delivering intelligent solutions related to multidisciplinary applications of information technology for better living in the post-pandemic era. Keynote speeches are presented by Professor Loring Marton from the Sapientia Hungarian University of Transylvania, Romania, Don Owens, PhD, from University of Texas, Dallas, the United States of America, and Professor Hiroki Tamura from the University of Miyazaki, Japan. We believe these enlightening speeches could inspire our scholarly endeavors to advance the synergy among information technology, industrial, and business sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, the organization of ICOMIT 2022 requires continuous efforts and great support from our conference organizing team members and paper reviewers, with their name enlisted in the proceedings. Then, we would like to sincerely thank all individuals who have rendered their support in every possible way to make this conference a reality. We would also like to express our gratitude to all authors and registered participants for their stimulating academic contributions to the vibrant intellectual exchange at this conference. Finally, with the online setting in the conference program, we hope every participant will have a unique ICOMIT experience for creating new friendships, long-lasting professional collaborations, and enduring beautiful memories. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rizwan, for the warm welcome speech. Now, it's my pleasure to invite to the podium the Dean of Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University, Professor Wayan Firdaus Mahmudi, PhD, to deliver a opening speech. Afterward, we would like to request the Dean to open the ICOMIT 2022 officially.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Good morning. On the behalf of the Faculty of Computer Science, I would like to extend our warmest welcome to all participants in the first conference on multidisciplinary application of information technology, or ICOMIT 2022. We are honored here to have Professor Martin Loring. Thank you for your coming to this venue. We have also Dr. Don Owens from the University of Texas at Dallas and Professor Hiroki Tamura from the University of Miyazaki, Japan. Universitas Brawijaya is one of the major universities in Indonesia. It is like the biggest university in Indonesia in terms of number of students. It has been committed to implement its vision to become an outstanding world-class university and can play active role in nation building through process of education, research, and community service. The Faculty of Computer Science always support the vision of Universitas Brawijaya. Thus, the international conference will be special event to increase our contribution to the international research community. I believe that this conference will bring researchers, graduate students, innovator, policymaker, and other party to share research progress between university, institution, government, and small to large scale industry to advance science and technology. I express my sincere gratitude for the willingness of all attendees, keynote speaker, and organizing committee for the maximum effort that has been made to select relevant paper with innovation, creativity, and scientific contribution. Terima kasih juga kepada para mahasiswa yang telah bersedia hadir di acara hari ini. Gunakan sebaik-baiknya kesempatan ini untuk mendapatkan ilmu tambahan selama studi di Fakultas Ilmu Komputer. Finally, this event will hopefully inspire better and more optimal research for the success and prosperity of all humankind. We wish you success in this conference and may you enjoy and feel comfortable during this online conference. Demikian, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Wayan, from the opening speech. Before we move to the next agenda, we will hold a photo session. two keynote speakers, and the chairman of ICOMIT, Dean of Philcom, and also 5 Dean. Please come forward. We are going to take a picture together. Silakan Bapak. Pak Bardian juga bisa mendampingi Pak Isa. Silakan Pak Sabriansa, Pak Adit, Pak Primantara, dan Pak Ridho. Pak Syauki, silakan Pak. Maskernya boleh dilepas sebentar untuk sesi foto. Okay, please present your best smiles. Cukup? Okay, thank you for your excellent cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now moving to the next agenda. It is my pleasure to welcome and invite our excellent first keynote speaker, Dan Owens, PhD from University of Texas at Dallas, USA. The keynote speech will be moderated by Mr. Sabriansah Rizky K. Akbar, PhD from Brawijaya University. Okay, please welcome and give a warm applause to Dan Owens, PhD and Mr. Sabriansah, PhD.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first international conference on multidisciplinary applications of information technology 2022, held by Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University. My name is Sabrian. I'm a lecturer from Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University, and I'm very happy to be here since I will be serving as your first session moderator today. In this first session, you'll be hearing presentations from Dr. Dan Owens. Dr. Owens is a clinical assistant professor at the University of Texas at Dallas, and Dr. Owens works in the Tyndall School of Management, teaching various information system courses. And Dr. Owens is also the program director from their undergraduate degree program titled Information Technology and Systems. Next, let me greet our respected speaker via Zoom. Hello, Dr. Owens, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me. Perfect, and we are very happy to have you here. And thank you for taking the time, even though there is a long time difference between Malang, Indonesia and Texas, United States of America. And probably in this first session, we will have 30 minutes presentations and 15 minutes question and answer. For the audience's information, we will answer questions during and after the presentations. And for the Zoom audiences, if you have any questions, you need to select the icon raise hand, and then the online moderator will unmute you, or you can put your questions in the chat room. And now moving along to our sessions, please welcome Dr. Dan Owens.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate that warm welcome. If it's okay here, I'm going to share some slides that I prepared for my talk. Hopefully you can all see it here. Wonderful. So in light of the conference theme, Multidisciplinary Applications of Information Technology for Better Living in the Post-Pandemic Era, I thought that it would be appropriate to talk about some of the research that I've done related to working from home during the COVID-19 pandemic, and then kind of where we go from there. So that is the title of my presentation. I had a wonderful introduction. You know a lot about me already. Just a few things that I would add to what has already been said. I am a member of the Association of Information Systems. I've been a member for quite a while, and that is really a great platform. It's given me the opportunity to meet so many wonderful people and even get connected to be able to come and speak to you all today. So a wonderful organization. I got my PhD from the University of Nebraska at Omaha in 2013, and some of my research interests include virtual teams, virtual project management, mixed method research, and working from home IT capabilities, and gender and IS. So just a quick agenda. I know we have some limited time, so we won't get through all of this, but I'll just talk a little bit about some of the research that I've been doing related to working from home during the pandemic. So I'll talk a little bit about the initial survey that was conducted. I'll dive a little bit into some of the findings, specifically work from home differences by gender, some of the study results. And then I'll talk a little bit about some follow-up surveys that we are in the process of conducting and some of the initial findings that we have found there, followed by Q&A. So I do want to, of course, I do have to mention my co-authors, Safa Abujora, Haya Ajan, Jane Fedoretz, and myself. And I mentioned that I was a member of AIS, and that's how I met these wonderful ladies here is through a networking event there at AIS. And we have been collaborating on this research for almost 2 years now, and met during the pandemic online, and that's how we've been working this entire time. And it's really been a really great experience to be able to do that and get to be involved in this process. So I'll talk a little bit about the research design. What is it that we were trying to study during this process? What were the research questions? How did we go about deciding how we were going to do that research? Was it qualitative versus quantitative? When did we do the research, and who were we going to study? So that's, I'll dive a little bit more deeper into all of those questions. But basically, we had some high-level initial research questions that we started out with, and we really wanted to understand working from home during the pandemic and what were some of the factors that influenced productivity. Technology, work, personal characteristics, how did that affect performance? Specifically, how did the lack of work-life boundaries due to the pandemic affect worker productivity and job performance? How does the lack of boundaries lead to potentially increased work from home conflict? We also looked at technology. We looked at technology availability, the speed and the availability of networking at home. Did that affect productivity? How did one's work from home attitude mediate the effects of worker performance? And then specifically, how did demographic groups, were certain demographics more at risk for decreased job performance while working from home during the COVID-19 pandemic? And that's, so we had this idea of, these are some of the things we had hoped to answer. And we started out with a very exploratory study. It was very exploratory in nature. We developed a pretty comprehensive survey. We looked at, what is it that we want to understand? Based on that, what are some specific constructs that we want to measure? And so there's a list of constructs here: control over time, technology usefulness, work from home conflict, work from home attitude, job productivity, technology, work from home training, care responsibilities, and stress. And so there's quite a few constructs there. You can see the definitions on the right-hand side, but again, we really had an idea that we were going to do an exploratory study and developed a survey around these constructs using validated measures. We also asked some questions that kind of went a little bit deeper in terms of working from home. We asked specifically, were there any job responsibility or job changes due to working from home? We asked about their schedule prior to working from home. We asked about their experience, their benefits. And we did put a limit on it. We wanted to make sure that we were surveying those survey participants were impacted by COVID-19 and were working from home during that, the required lockdown period. We also gathered some demographics, such as living arrangements, caregiving responsibilities. We looked at, did you have young children in the home and what ages? We looked at gender, age, marital status, country, their job role, and their title. Now, in terms of ICT, information, communications, and technology, we asked questions relating to internet connection speed and reliability, We asked questions related to how they use that while working from home. And then also, how did the employer provide for that? Did the employer provide provisions for that? And then we had some open-ended questions that allowed us to look at specific challenges, obstacles, and suggestions for management. And that really gave us an opportunity to combine some both quantitative and qualitative aspects to our research. And with the open-ended questions, we were able to really add some context to the data that we were finding from a quantitative perspective. But our initial survey was distributed online in April 2020, and we left it open from April 27th to May 8th. And during that period, we received 870 responses, which is a very, very good response. Now, after we went through the data and cleaned the data, we were left with 545 valid responses for analysis. And of that, we were able to get data from 38 different countries. So we had a very, very good sample of data to work with, to be able to look at from all different angles. When we look at the respondent demographics, we can see the breakdown between gender, male and female. So 38.5% were male, 61.5% were female. And of those, 33.9% had children under the age of 18 at home. You can see the age breakdown as well. Now, when we look at gender, 445 of the 545 respondents indicated a binary gender and provided data on children at home. And in terms of results, so again, we were able to take these results and again, look at it from various angles. And we have published 3 different studies there. I've listed them there. I'm going to talk about the second one, excuse me, a little bit more in depth, and time permitting, possibly the third one. But we're going to look a little bit more closely at what we found in terms of gender differences. So I'll go into that next. Working from home during the COVID-19 crisis, a closer look at gender differences. So we had a conceptual model that guided our research, and we were really interested in personal characteristics and how they influence working from home, specifically gender and parental status. How did it influence specifically working from home? How did it influence one's control over time, technology usefulness, their attitude of working from home, work from home attitude, and then what about work-family conflict? How did these things affect work from home conflict? And we refined our research questions. We kind of narrowed the scope a little bit for this survey here. We looked at, are there any significant differences in those 4 work from home characteristics based on gender? So again, work from home attitude, control over time, work from home conflict, and perceived technology usefulness. Are there significant differences among those characteristics based on the presence of children in the home? And then finally, is there a significant interaction between gender and presence of children in the home relative to those 4 work from home characteristics? So again, we had a very large data set to work with, and we did some statistical analysis. We did 2-way multi-analysis of variance, and that was used to test the significance of the direct and interaction effects of gender and presence of children in the home. Box test was used to evaluate equal variances among groups. Now, if the multivariate test was significant, then we did univariate ANOVA to determine significant group differences. And then finally, we looked very closely at those open-ended comments, and we did some coding on those open-ended comments to triangulate the data with those quantitative results to really give us some context and some depth to those findings. So if we look at the results, so remember, we had those 4 work from home characteristics: control over time, technology usefulness, work from home attitude, work from home conflict. And then we looked at gender, children in the home, and the cross between gender and children in the home. We look at control over time, it was significant across the board. So there was, it was significant that participants felt lack of control over time. Technology usefulness was significant across, between genders. Work from home attitude was not significant. This was interesting. It was not significant across gender, across whether or not you had children in the home. And then work from home conflict. It was significant if there were children in the home, and also is significant between gender and children in the home. And then all four of them, again, doing a combined analysis, it was significant across the board. So if we look a little bit closer into some of these results, let's look at lack of control over time. That was significant across, gender. We look at male and female. The line at the bottom represents the male respondents, and the line going upwards, the line on top, is females. And you see there is a wider gap between male and females, lack of control over time, when there are children under 18 in the home. So the presence of children in the home was very significant across genders. Again, females felt less control over time when there were children in the home, when they were working from home. Similarly, work from home conflict. This was also very interesting. If we look at the difference between genders, male and female, the line here, this is male, the one on the bottom is male. This line going straight up is female. And you see the gap widens between male and female with the presence of children in the home under the age of 18. So work from home conflict appeared to be more significant for females who had children under the age of 18 at home. So to summarize, women experience less control over time and lower perceived technology usefulness. Gender differences were even more significant for those who had children living at home. Both female and male respondents experienced a similar work from home attitude and work from home conflict. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the open-ended questions. It was from a survey respondent. It says, "It's not working from home. I can do that. It's working while at home with kids and my spouse during a pandemic. That's the problem." So again, this is giving us the indication that there are challenges. There are other factors that are playing into one's ability to be productive at home while working from home. Dependent children at home. So again, control over time and work from home conflict are significant for those respondents who had children under the age of 18 living at home. Now, females specifically with dependent children living at home experience lower control over time and higher work from home conflict than their male counterparts. So kind of what we saw in those charts there. So based on this, what are our recommendations? So the recommendations, based on the survey results and our analysis, technical support and office equipment was very, very important. We found that, again, and it wasn't mentioned in the previous slides, but we found that participants really struggled during that initial lockdown period. They struggled with having the appropriate technology hardware. They struggled with having appropriate office equipment, office settings. And so one of the recommendations in order for employees to be productive is that employers provide adequate technical support and office equipment for their employees so that they're able to be productive and do their jobs well. Another recommendation is to acknowledge personal differences. Employees and their managers must acknowledge that there are differences in gender, differences in parental status, and that's going to impact their ability to be productive, especially during certain work hours, which leads to the third and final recommendation: flexible work hours and more or different childcare options. And so again, offering a flexible work schedule, especially to those who might have young children at home that were going to school at the same time. And so, based on these things, these are the things that we recommend to employers. So again, that's one of the papers that we published. We then went on to do some further analysis, and we looked at the data from a little bit different perspective. We looked at it from the job demands resource theoretical model, the JDR model, how job demands and resources affect productivity and work from home attitude during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we really looked at, like I said, the JDR model, which is based on, it has two different underlying psychological processes that play a role in the development of job stress and motivation, job-related strain and motivation. So we look at job demands. We think things like the mental, the emotional, the physical things, job demands. We look at job resources, support, autonomy, feedback. And how do these things play on one's, strain, one's motivation, and how does it affect their overall productivity? So again, looking at it from a different lens or a different perspective, we looked at, again, for job demands. What would be some job demands when working from home? Some things that might be unique to somebody who's working from home during these conditions. But we looked at stress-induced work from home examples might include that work-family conflict that I mentioned, which might lead to role overload or time pressure. We looked at stress-reducing work from home examples, things that we might not think about, things like there's less commute time, more flexibility in work-life accommodations, more time to attend to personal health. So from a job resources perspective, while working from home, right, these are the things that help an employee do their job. Work from home examples might be access to information communication technology, job control, more control over time. So these things, again, might be unique when an employee is working from home. So the consequences of the job demands and resources, again, we were trying to look at it from a perspective of, are there some things that are unique to the work at home environment that might lead to higher productivity, or the reverse of that might lead to lower productivity? And so again, we looked at stress from both perspectives and also work attitudes as well as well-being. For example, the work from home attitude that I mentioned. And so our research was guided by these specific research questions. So again, a little bit different focus than the previous papers. We looked at how did work from home job resources like control over time and job demands and stress affect one's working from home attitude. Do remote workers' attitude toward working from home affect their productivity? So does their attitude towards working from home affect their overall productivity? And then finally, what role does technology as a job resource play in influencing a remote worker's work from home attitude and productivity? So based on that, we had the following research model that helped guide our research. And again, you see the job resources, job demands, leading to the organizational outcome, job productivity. So in terms of job resources, technology ease of use, technology usefulness, control over time, job control, job demands, stress, and then we have work from home attitude as a mediator within our JDR model, a mediator that might help mediate some of positive or negative influences on job productivity. So again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into all the details of how we did the analysis there, but I'll just briefly touch on the summary of our findings. So we found that work from home attitude plays a prominent role in linking job demands and resources to productivity. So one's attitude really did influence productivity. The ICT usefulness, the technology usefulness, positively impacts one's work from home attitude and is a mediator towards improved productivity. Job resources influences productivity, but it's mediated by one's work from home attitude. And stress, work from home attitude mediates between stress as a job demand affecting productivity. And then finally, some demographic analysis showed the significance of age, presence of family, family responsibilities, and job role, manager versus whether they're a manager or not a manager, affected their productivity. Now, in this study, we found that gender was not significant. So those were some of our findings from the JDR model. Now, in terms of next steps, where do we go from here? Well, we have constructed a second survey. Now that employees have been working from home for a while, they've adjusted, kids have gone back to school, things are a little bit different. And so we're looking at it from how have people adapted to working from home? So we're trying to gain new insight into how employees have adapted after they were forced to work from home for an extended period. We're measuring some of the same direct and indirect factors affecting work from home performance, like work from home attitude, work-family conflict, control over time. So we're measuring some of the same things. But we've added some new questions to go a little bit deeper. We're looking at how are you currently working? Are you working from home full-time? Are you working from home part-time? Is it a hybrid situation? And is it by choice? So we're looking at the length of time spent working at home. We're also trying to understand if there were any changes to job roles. Did people change their role? Did they go to a different role? Did they lose their job during the pandemic? Did they choose to exit the workforce? So we're trying to get a little bit deeper into, were there any job changes and why? Looking at work exhaustion and then other sources of stress while working from home. So we've already constructed the survey. In fall of 2021, we did a small pilot test. Now, one thing that we're doing differently this time is we're using a professional survey company to help reach our intended audience. Because again, we're trying to really look at, want to make sure that we have all the different groups represented, those working from home, full-time, part-time, a hybrid situation, looking for those who have, changed jobs, lost jobs. So we're really, trying to get a good group of data collected representing these different buckets. And so that's why we decided to work with a professional survey company on this one. So we distributed the survey last November. And again, it was kind of like a pilot test. We kind of wanted to see how much data we had and wanted to make sure we were asking the right questions. And so from there, we had 338 usable surveys. Half worked remotely during the pandemic and lost or quit jobs. Half maintained employment but worked remotely during the pandemic. So what we're planning to do, again, we're making some changes based on the data that we've collected. And in August, so next month, we'll do our second pilot test. And then in fall, we'll do the final distribution. But one thing I thought that I would mention here is some of the interesting findings, just at a quick glance of those 338 responses. In our initial survey, we heard that working from home was a challenge. It was not preferred. Working from home, working conditions were not ideal because childcare was problematic and flexibility was not the norm. We found that people were forced to work from home and didn't have ideal working conditions. Now that, we've had a lot of time has passed, people have adapted. And the second survey, we're finding that working from home is actually preferred. It's the preferred model. The work from home work conditions have been adapted so that people have adapted their workspace so that they can now be more productive in the work from home setting. Childcare is not as problematic, primarily because those young children have gone back to school. And instead of flexibility not being the norm, flexibility is now becoming the norm. It is now being more expected. So again, these are just some high-level findings that I thought that I would mention. Of course, we're going to go deeper into these as well, but I thought I would mention them because they are interesting. So in summary, the era of COVID-19 may have ended. However, there are lasting consequences that have dramatically changed the way that we work. There is a lot still to be learned and how technology can influence productivity in remote conditions. So understanding these changes will help future employers and future workers make the most of their working conditions as we all try to understand the new normal. And so I'm so excited, about the conference here today, about the research that everyone is doing. It's very exciting. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Again, I want to thank you for inviting me, and I welcome anyone to connect with me via email, LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you. But with that, I will turn it back over to our moderator.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Owens. You are really addressing our problem right here. We have so many problems during the pandemics since probably at the first pandemic, we didn't have the presence of the technology. We don't understand as well which technology that will be very useful for addressing our problem at the time. And also, I think the control over time is the very important issues. I think there are, we also have children right in the home, and also they are doing the school online, and sometimes during our work time, they also need to need our attentions and something like that. And it's quite interesting that if the organizations have the correct technology here and the help of the technical support, special technical support for this technology, and acknowledge the personal differences and the flexible work hours can be solutions for the pandemic's problem and increase our productivity and efficiency for the working hours. So now Dr. Owens will answer some questions. If you all have questions to our respected speaker, please raise hand and then I will try to unmute you. You only need to select the small icon, raise hand, or alternatively, you can give questions in the chat room. Please. Okay, maybe there are one questions from Dr. Sari. Thank you for your talk. It is very interesting and also give us insights on the process of your research. I wonder whether you consider single parents in your study. That is the first question. And the second is, in your opinion, what makes women have higher work from home conflicts? That's the questions. Maybe I can answer Dr. Owens, please.
Sure, those are excellent questions. Yes, we did consider single parents. So we did ask that question, are you the primary caregiver? It was one of the questions we did ask in our survey. And in terms of what makes work from home conflict higher for females, I think it goes back to kind of this gender role theory. That's another aspect that we've been looking at is the gender role theory, is that there's an expectation that, that females are caregivers and they are the primary caregivers for children in the home. And I think there's a struggle there for females because especially when, there are both genders working at home. Now, again, that is a very, it's a very blanket statement and it doesn't apply to everyone, right? There are, I know, there are amazing, males out there as well who share just as much responsibility as taking care of the children in the home. But again, oftentimes the expectation is it does fall to the females. And even if it doesn't, again, being a female caregiver myself, I put a lot of my own pressure on myself to be the good mom and to be there for my kids, even though their dad is there and he's wonderful. I still put a lot of my own pressure on myself. So I think a lot of that conflict, that work from home conflict, it comes from a lot of different sources. But it's kind of a long-winded answer to your question, where some of that conflict might come from.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Owens, for the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we will move to the second questions. Anyone? Okay, Ms. Rosa. We will have questions from the audience here, Dr. Owens. Okay, please.
Okay, thank you so much for your very interesting presentation, Dr. Aon. Nice to meet you. I am Rosa. I am the computer engineering lecturer, and actually this is not my research area, but I have a new insight and then new knowledge about the process of your research. So my question is, based on your opinion, or maybe based on your research, what is the positive impact of work from home? Can you explain about that? Thank you.
Sure. So in terms of positive impact, I think the positive impact for working from home is there was and it's really hard because during those first few months when we were in the forced lockdown, I think it was a struggle for people to, at the very beginning. But now that people have adapted and they've seen the benefits of working from home, things like more personal time for your own, mental and physical health, more time to kind of multitask and instead of spending time on a long commute, you heard that I live in Texas, Dallas, Texas, and a commute can be at least, sometimes for me can be an hour one way. And so that's a long time to commute, and it takes a lot of time out of your day. And if you think about, if you're spending 2 hours in the car that you're no longer spending anymore, people can take that time and spend it on their own mental and physical health. And so I think, we've seen that be a definite positive for those who are working from home. And again, the more control over time, more flexibility. Those organizations, those employers who support that, not every organization has bought into the fact that, we can work outside those 8 to 5 hours, but there are some organizations who are allowing those employees to work when it's best for them. And by doing that, they are getting more out of their employees. They're able to, again, when I'm more control over my time and decide how I'm going to spend those 40 hours, I'm much more productive versus forcing myself to sit down during the 8 to 5 period when, I might be distracted because I have, 10 other things that I think that I need to do. So I think those are some of the definite benefits that we've seen by working from home. Not to mention all the new technology that's coming out to allow us to do things that we couldn't have done, a few years ago.
Thank you, Dr. Alvarez, for the questions. So maybe for the last questions, anyone from the students, maybe? Okay, maybe Dr. Tifa, do you have any questions, please?
Thank you for your opportunity because the speaker presentation was very interesting because I would like to ask based on demographic question in 9 slide. Yes, slide 9. In how to choose which factor to survey first, second, and so on. Because I know if all demographic factors were carried out in the early stage of the survey, and then what impact would it have on your research? Thank you. Okay.
Could you restate part of that? I didn't get the middle part of that. What impact
did in the slide 9?
Oh, 9?
9, okay. And then 9, and then you explain about demographic question.
Oh, okay.
And then have 2 factors, yes, in all demographic, yes. And then you only explain in the 1 survey and then 2 survey. Is right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yes, we did look at some of the questions that we asked related to living arrangements, right? Do you have, and we didn't look just at children. We asked, do you have any elderly parents living in the home? Do you have any anyone with special needs living in the home? So we looked at caregiving responsibilities. I think that's what you're referring to in the box. So we did go a little bit deeper there. And we looked at living arrangements. We asked, are you living alone? Are there people who are, how many people are living in the house with you? Because that is, that was an important factor as well that may play a role in the conflict and attitude. And so again, I didn't really talk much about those, but we did look at those to see if they made an impact. And in the gender survey or the gender paper that I referenced, they weren't significant. So that's why we didn't why I didn't mention them there, because they weren't really significant in that paper. But I have another question here in the chat. It's an excellent question. Why were there more women in the survey than men? And that's a really good question. We distributed the survey just via our own personal networks, LinkedIn, emails, referrals, and that is the distribution that we got. So again, in our controlled survey distribution, we'll try to make sure that we have a good representation from, a more balanced representation from both genders.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Owens, for the answer. And so probably we reached the end of the first session. So thank you very much, Dr. Dawn Owens, for addressing these interesting topics and answering questions from the audiences. On behalf of the Faculty of Computer Science, University of Brawijaya, and the ICOMIT committee, we would like to say thank you to you, and hopefully we will have opportunities in the future, and we are looking forward to meeting you again. So everyone, this concludes our first sessions of the conferences. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Dawn Owens.
Thank you very much.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Please give applause to Prof. Owens and Prof. Sabriansa. Okay, everyone, we will have a short break for the next sessions. And the following keynote speech will start afterwards. So please enjoy your break time. We will gather again in this room in 5 minutes, maybe? Yeah, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, now we move to our second keynote speaker. We welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Loring Marton from the Sapientia Hungarian University of Transylvania, Romania. Mr. Eko Setiawan, PhD from Brawijaya University will moderate these sessions. Please welcome and give applause for Professor Loring Marton and Eko Setiawan, PhD.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mrs. Nesty, for the time. So, welcome to International Conference on Multidisciplinary Application of Information Technology, ICOMIT, at the Keynote Speech 2 session. So, my name is Eko Setiawan. I'm one of lecturer in Faculty of Computer Science, Universitas Brawijaya. So today I will be serving as your moderator today. You will hear a presentation from Professor Loring Marton. Is this right? From Sapientia Hungarian University of Transylvania. But before we get started, I want to take a few minutes to read a short biography of Professor Loring Marton. So, Professor Loring Marton worked at Sapientia Hungarian University of Transylvania as professor from 2003 to now. And then he also have worked at German Aerospace Center, Robotic and Mechatronics Center as visiting researcher from 2010 up to 2011, and then work at AAGES Ltd as electrical engineering from 1999 to 2000. So he got his PhD degree from Budapest University of Technology and Economic at 2003. And then his research interest about a control of network, control robot, mechatronics, fault diagnosis, and so on. Well, moving along to our session, please welcome Professor Loring Marton, who will be speaking to us on modeling and migration-based control of depopulation. Professor Marton, time is yours.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. I'm very glad to be here and I'm very glad to be invited to your conference. Actually, as you can see, I have a double affiliation. One is in Romania, one is in Hungary. There are two different countries. However, compared to Indonesia, these are quite small countries. For example, the population of Hungary is smaller than the population of Jakarta city, actually. So it's not a big deal for us to move from one country to another in Europe. You should also know that at our department, we have a lecturer from your university. He's a PhD candidate, a doctoral candidate. And he's one of the best PhD candidates at our department, and he's working hard, and he's also producing some very good results. We are very pleased with him. We are very pleased with his Indonesian culture and culture of working, and his attitude to this research work. Okay, during this talk, I would like to focus on this multidisciplinary application of information technology. I just wanted to show you how these notions, what we have developed and learned in the system theory, can be applied to such science areas as demography or population dynamics. Okay. First, during this talk, I will introduce some basic notions to see where we are. Then I will give a small motivation of this research work. I will discuss about the mathematical modeling of depopulation and migration. And if I will have some time, I will talk also about some control design approach in migration. Finally, I will conclude this study. Okay, so I think most of us know what a network means. So by network, we mean a system which has some subsystems with similar properties, and they are also interconnected by some links. Here you can see city with bridges that are connected. In the case of migration networks, the subsystems are actually habitats. By habitat, we mean it can be a village, it can be a city, a town, or entire country, or whatever you wish, a region. And we say that these subsystems are interconnected if the migration, the movement of people is possible between them. And it is not negligible. Okay, what we mean by population dynamics. In the case of population dynamics, we are discussing the change of a population in a habitat. So if we have a habitat and we denote by n the population size in this habitat, then the variation in time of this population can depend on the current state or the current population and of that habitat and on the migrating population, the migration inflows and outflows from that habitat. And these dynamics can be described by the so-called growth function. So actually this dn over dt denotes that how the population changes over a period of time. And if this growth function is positive, it's quite clear that the population will increase. And if it is negative, then the population will decrease. Now, what we mean by control? In the case of control, let's assume that we have a kind of habitat and we are making some measurements about the population size, and we also have a control goal. We want to fix a kind of, we want to have a kind of predefined population in that habitat. Then we want to develop some strategies, some methods, some control methods that can say us how we should act on that habitat in order to achieve that desired population size. Okay, so these were some basic notions. Now let's see what we are talking about during, what are the motivation of this research work that I will present here. Now, back in Europe, actually, we have a huge problem related to depopulation. Depopulation means population shrinking in a habitat. This depopulation problem is mostly related to the out-migration, to the emigration, because Romania is a relatively poor country inside Europe, and everyone wants to live better, and they just leaving this country. This is one problem, the out-migration, and the other problem is related to the aging. As you will see, these two things are connected. This is also happens in Romania, but not only in Romania. In more developed countries, these are also problems, the rural depopulation. And this is actually a publication related to Spain. And not just in Spain, even the rural depopulation, the depopulation of villages happens in the most developed countries of the world. For example, in the United States of America, because the small villages are depopulating, the population size is shrinking because everyone wants to leave from there to, I don't know, to New York, for example. Okay, and what is interesting, actually I find this paper these days, this is also can be a problem even in your country where apparently the population size increases, but there are some small villages in which we are assisting on some population decrease, and that can be a problem for some regions. Actually, one of the co-authors of this paper is from your university, not from this faculty, but from your university. So this is a kind of global problem, even in such countries as Indonesia. Okay, now let's see what can be the causes, the reasons of the migration. This picture was taken here from my hometown. Actually, it's not a natural catastrophe. Actually, this temple was destroyed because the entire village was destroyed because the government just decided to build a dam in over that village, and they have filled that up. So everyone had to leave that village. So with such reasons, we cannot do anything. So it was a decision of the government, and the village disappeared. Generally, in other villages, that's what's happening. The people are leaving from there in order to find some better job opportunities in bigger cities, and they finally decide to leave there, to leave their home villages, the rural area. If you take a look on the depopulation problem, so as I presented before, we have some so-called reasons for the fast emigration. That can be a natural catastrophe, a political decision, wars, epidemics, but we also have some slow, we are calling the slow reasons for the, rural immigration that are related to urbanization, climate change, the effects of the climate change, cultural reasons, and so on. And these can lead to depopulation, but we also have a natural decrease. That happens when the population is aging. And there is a change in the population structure, population age structure. It is also very interesting that this changing in age structure and the out-migration actually are connected, because who leaves a village? Actually, the young people leave the village, and the old people stay, and the fertility rate of the entire village decreases. And what are the consequences of the emigration? The consequences can be very severe. We can lose the economic dynamics. We can lose the basic service offers such as health, education, public transport. We have this very huge problem related to the crop abandonment. It means that the fields are not cultivated anymore. Generally, we can say that the quality of life decreases. And it is very strange that the destinations also can suffer from excessive immigration. Why is that? Because if everyone moves, for example, from the villages to Malang, here the price of the housing increases, we have overpopulation, more pollution, and in the long run, actually the quality of life can decrease even in the destination habitats. And it means that actually we have to deal with this problem whenever it is possible and necessary. So what we can do? We are actually computer scientists, but we can write programs, we can develop algorithms, we can write up equations, so that or approach that we will try. And here, so in this research, we wanted to develop a population dynamics model that is able to catch both the depopulation phenomena and this migration process. And we also want to develop a migration-based depopulation method, how the migration should be manipulated in order to avoid depopulation. Now, how the depopulation can be modeled? So if we look on a habitat, what influences the population change inside this habitat? So the population rate of change can be composed of 4 factors. We have a birth rate, we have a death rate, These are local factors. And we also have a migration inflow rate and a migration outflow rate. So that's what we generally have. And more formally, we can write it as a kind of ordinary differential equation. If we assume that we have a habitat and we have some input neighbors and we have some output neighbors of that habitat, then the variation of the time derivative of the population is composed of the local growth function and the migration influx rate and the migration minus the migration outflux rate, which are summed up over the neighboring habitats. Okay, now the question is, how can we model a local population when there is no migration? The very first model, you're probably familiar with it, is the so-called exponential population growth. In this case, the growth function is linear, in a sense that actually when there are more people in that habitat, the population grows faster. That's the general affirmation. And actually this model predicts then the population will explode, the population size increases continuously, and the population will explode, and the population of the habitat increases until the end of time. Obviously, it's quite logical that it doesn't really happen. It is why this next model was introduced. It is the called, you are probably also familiar with this one, it is called the logistic growth, self-limiting growth model. This model says that each habitat has a limited amount of resources. It means that there is a maximum population size that a habitat can support. This is called the carrying capacity of the habitat, is denoted by K here. And the growth function is designed in such a way that when this carrying capacity is reached, then the growth will be zero. You can see that curve over there. And in the population dynamics, it means that the population will increase, but it will saturate when it reaches this carrying capacity. Okay, these are the classic models. You probably have learned about it. Now the question is, what we should do with the aging? How this aging can be modeled? Now, we have made the following assumptions. At high population size, this carrying capacity still remains important. We have to keep it in the model. But at low population size, the aging could yield to depopulation. Now, this model, what we wanted to develop, should have different behavior when the population size is high and different behavior when the population size is low. How can this be formulated? Now, first I've taken a look on the literature, obviously, and what I found in a very influential paper, current paper, that there is no consensus what depopulation means. So I had to deal with such a phenomena that wasn't really defined. So right now I had two possibilities: to abandon this research track or to give a definition for depopulation. I've taken the second way. So I tried to define this depopulation problem. So first, we have introduced the notion of critical population size. What this critical population size means? It means that if the population drops above this level and there is no immigration into that habitat, then the population will disappear. Okay, and the habitat is subject to depopulation if the initial population is under this critical population size. Okay, but with this definition, we consider again the general growth model. As you see in this growth model, we have divided the growth function into two terms: n times a per capita growth rate. The n times means that it is multiplied by n, the growth rate. It is always, we should always do that, because when the population is zero, we have no change, okay, because the habitat is empty. Okay, and the per capita growth rate is we define in such a way that that R function, that growth function will be negative if the population is under the critical population size, and positive if the population is over the critical population size. Now, the question is, how can we take some functions? There are several possibilities. One of it you can see here. What is important here, I will go to show you. Right here we have this critical population size. And if you use, thank you. So if you use such a growth function, you can see that here under the critical population size, the growth is negative, and over the critical population size, the growth is positive. So actually, this is the function what we have designed. And when we try out in the sense of population dynamics with this, we can observe that the population increases to the carrying capacity when the population is, the initial population is over this critical population, which is 100, but under it, the population vanishes. So we have decided to apply this model, which, because it describes what we really want. The other problem is that this critical population size won't be a constant. So in which sense? This critical population size actually depends on the median age of the population. Why I'm showing these pictures? Actually, the picture from the left-hand side is quite common, and on the right-hand side is quite rare, if we consider that both men are fathers there. Because obviously, the fertility rate decreases, of a population decreases, when the population is aging. So we can assume that this critical population size depends on the median age of the population. And it depends in a way that is a strictly increasing function. So if the median age increasing, the critical population size also increasing. Now, we have also searched the literature for how this age problem can be introduced into our model. Now, if you want to introduce this model, I have taken a look on the literature. There are, for example, such models, McKendrick von Forester model, for example, which is actually a partial differential equation, which is very good for predicting what is happening in the case of aging. I will explain it immediately. But as you can see, it is hard, for example, to design control methods on it due to the fact that this is a partial differential equation and it is hard to handle from practical point of view. What this model describes, you probably heard about age pyramids. The age pyramids actually describe how a population is distributed in function of age. Actually, these are real data. That's the age pyramid of Indonesia, where we are now. And the other one is the age pyramid of Eastern Europe, from where I'm coming. As you see that Indonesia right now has a very healthy age pyramid. There are many children around, and the pyramid decreases. And when the age is, the pyramid shrinks when the age increases. Actually, and what you can see in Europe, we have less children, unfortunately, and the core of this pyramid is moving up. It means that within 40 years or within 20 years or 40 years, we have a lot of old people and very small amount of young people in Eastern Europe. And this is a problem. You can imagine that. This is why they are doing such kind of research. About the prediction of the entire population, this is what the United Nations says about Indonesia. The population will still increase up to, let's say, 2050, 60. Then you will have that slope. In Eastern Europe, we have already passed that slope. In Eastern Europe, the population decreases, as you can see there. So we already have a problem. But, and theoretically, you will have the same problem within 30 or 40 years, actually. But until now, you you will have some experience what you should do in this case, because Europe right now has the very same problem. Now back to that partial differential equation. Actually, that describes how this age pyramid evolves over time. Okay, so this is what that partial differential describes. What we have done with it, because it was quite complicated. So we have taken the definition of the median age, and we have assumed that under the median age, the mortality rate is almost constant. Obviously, it's not constant, but it's low. Due to the healthcare systems, we can make this assumption. After the median age, the mortality rate increases, obviously. And we have shown, I won't enter into the details, that this age-dependent partial differential equation can be approximated well with an ordinary differential equation, which I have shown you before. And so we can apply such models, even in the case when the age influences the population dynamics, which was good news because we can deal with such problems. Okay, how the migration can be modeled? That's the other factor that influences the population dynamics. Now, if you take an outlook on the animal world, for example, in that case, now consider that you have two habitats, two neighboring habitats with similar properties. And how the animal moves between these habitats. If there are many animals in one and less animals in the other, then the animals will move from the dense, where the population is dense, to the habitat where the population is rare. So actually the migration is driven by the population density difference. What is important that it is not true in the case of human migration right now in these days. It was true, I don't know, 10,000 years ago, but right now it's not true. Why it is? Because what we see is that we are generally, the population tends to move from smaller villages to bigger cities. And obviously we had to develop, they had to develop some models for this. What they have taken, it was the classical Newton's gravity law, and which says that the migration rate between two habitats depends on the population size in one habitat, the population size in the other habitat, the distance between these habitats, and there are some factors which we can introduce in the model that describes the specific of this migration. If we want to make it more general, we can assume that the migration rate between two habitats depends on the migration costs between this habitat. This can be financial cost, the distance, so it's a summarized cost. And the source habitat has a repulsive function. So it means that it pushes away the people from there. And the destination habitat has an attractiveness function. It means that it draws in the population, which should be defined, actually. And if we go back to that classic gravity model, we can see that actually that model is also can be formulated in such a way that it has an attractiveness, a repulsiveness, and a cost. The problem with this model is that this model predicts a limitless migration inflow if the population increases. So it means that actually if the population size in a habitat increases, then this migration inflow also increases. However, it is not really true. Why not? Because the migrants, the people who decide to leave from habitat A to habitat B, it can be assumed that they are informed about the living condition in the destination habitat. What that means, if you know that, I don't know, for example, New York is full and you cannot buy a house there and you cannot find any job there, you won't go there. You will go into another city. So how can it be formulated? So we have introduced a new model in which we have assumed that when the population reaches in a habitat, reaches its carrying capacity, then the population inflow also stops into that habitat. Okay, and we also made some assumption about the gradients. And what resulted is a new model which also predicts an increase when the population is far, in the destination habitat is far from its carrying capacity, but when it reaches its carrying capacity, the population, the migration inflow actually stops because that habitat is kind of full, and and no one wants to go there because the living conditions getting worse. Okay, if you want to summarize everything what we have done until now, we will get such a model in which we have local population growth, migration inflow, migration outflow, defined by that per capita rate function and by attractiveness and repulsiveness functions. If we have some time, how we stay with okay, thank you. I will discuss about some, based on this model, we have also developed a control strategy, how the migration, how the depopulation can be avoided using migration. Now, what about the control? So what possibilities we have? The first possibility is to forget about control, just leave it as it is. Okay, that also happened, for example, in Japan. For example, when when a population dropped under this critical population size, they just relocated the people who remained there, and that was a strategy. Actually, the habitat was abandoned. What we want, if we decide not to take this way, then we want to avoid the depopulation. This is let's say an ideal village, and we have old people, young people, everyone is happy, the living conditions are good. And what we can do by taking these basic models. So we have several possibilities. The first one is to increase the birth rate into that habitat. That's one possibility. The second possibility is to increase the population inflow into that habitat. And the third possibility is to decrease the population outflow in that habitat. Is quite logic. That's our tools. Actually, in Europe, all of them are already tried, and we are trying those. For example, this happens right now. For example, in Hungary, you will get 30,000 euros if a couple decide that they will produce their third children. That is happening right now in Hungary. If you have 3 children, then you will get this amount of money, and that's all. So that was one. It's the same, almost the same in dollar. Okay, that's one of the possibilities. It's the birth control. It also happens in Italy, but they have decided that if someone moves in such an Italian region where the depopulation is severe and once decides to live there, then he will get 25,000 euros. So it's another amount of money what they offer for them. So these are related to birth control and immigration. This is the last approach. Actually, this happens in Spain. So they are giving money for such companies who invest in such areas which are subject to depopulation. So actually, these are the tricks what we are trying now out in Europe. I don't know if they will work. You will see that in 10 years, we will see that in 10 years or 30 years, but these are the mechanisms to act on the population sizes. What other possibilities we have? We can also, it depends on the government, obviously, we can also make a diversification in economic sectors to, I don't know, to build some factories around these depopulated areas and to attract people there. The second one is very important, and it was also so that it works. For example, if the small villages that have a good internet connection, are less depopulated as the same size small villages that do not have a good internet connection. And it is quite true in this post-COVID era, because many people, as we saw in the previous talk, are working from home. So we can also stay in a small village and make some programming on something if you have a good internet connection. And we have this very funny last tool, which means financial support. Okay, so let's get back to our equation. How can we introduce these factors into our model? So what we have done, we have modified, take a look over there, we have modified the costs of the migration by adding up there it's U input and U output. So it means that we are modifying the costs of migration. So actually we will try to increase the costs of migration inflow, and we try to decrease the cost of the migration outflow by taking such measures. Okay, so this is how it can be formulated in the language of mathematics. We can also write that model. This is the very same model, but it was written more condensed. So we have that RM denotes actually the population dynamics without control. And the second term, what you can see here, denotes the influence of the control of on the entire dynamics. And what we want, now the control objective is more formal. What we want is to design that control input vector in such a way that the population has a prescribed dynamics. So we want to act only when the population is under the critical population size, not always, obviously. And we want to design such a control input, which means the magnitude of the support, the magnitude of the cost, that the population dynamics will be equal to a prescribed dynamics, which is described by a prescribed per capita rate function. You will see that immediately. So if the population drops under the critical population size, then we do not want it to move freely. We want to have a predefined dynamics down there in that critical part. Okay, now another problem that we have to tackle, that there are many sources what we can influence. So, and how we can decide which one is prioritized. So to each source, we can attach a priority constant actually to each control. For example, if we want in Hungary more people from Indonesia, then it will got a higher priority constant. And if you want less people from the States, they will got a lower priority constant. I don't know. And it turns out that actually, if we want to solve this problem, we just have to solve a kind of systems of equation, which is quite easy to do. And based on this equation, we can compute the necessary control magnitude what we need. There is another problem. If you have learned some control engineering, you probably know that that these models are not perfect. We cannot have a perfect model for this population dynamics. So we can assume that we also have a term in the model. We have to assume that we have this term in the model, which term is an unknown term. We do not know yet that, but it describes the uncertainty because those constants that appear, the carrying capacity and the critical population size, we cannot know that perfectly. So those constants are not known perfectly. So we should introduce in the model an unknown term. However, we can assume that that is bounded. So it cannot be, I don't know, infinitely high or infinitely low. And we are, during control design, we have worked with this model. And based on its model, I won't enter again into the computational details, but we have shown that if we choose the prescribed rate function in such a way, and the control is parameterized in such a way that it satisfies that equation, in that case, this control objective can be achieved in a sense that the population can be avoided. Okay, so let's see some graphics, some simulations. Let's take this case when we have a habitat, we have two input neighbors, we have two output neighbors, we have a local population inside, which is over the critical population. We have a small migration inflow, but we have an excessive migration outflow. In this case, if we do the simulations based on the presented models, we can see that even if the population size is over the critical population size, we have the population vanishes due to the excessive migration outflow and the small migration inflow. However, if we take these control measures, then as you can see there, the population decreases up to this critical population size. In that case, the control is switched on when the critical population size is reached. These graphics show how severe the control action should be, how severe we should influence the population. And with these, the population decrease can be stopped, and we will regain the population in that region, in that habitat. Okay, so my let's see, last slide to conclude a bit this topic. So what are these mathematical migration models? This is very important, it's very simplified descriptions of the this migration processes. The migration is very complicated thing, is studied by many researchers. However, if you develop a model, you should always have to be care about the fact that the model should have a goal. Actually, the developed model should reflect such aspects of the migrations that are important from the view of the targeted application. It means that, example, the targeted application is control, then you need a control-oriented model, which shows the effect of the control input on the population dynamics. And if we have such a model, and it also can have uncertainties, but they can be handled during control design. And based on this model, the control parameters, the control enabled time, the control effort can be estimated, which can be a good information for those people who decide to act on the migration controls. And this is a cliche that you probably heard at other conferences and well, but here is highly important, that there are no good models, but some of them can be useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Loring. Well, Yeah, quite nice, interesting. I so surprised because in engineering we only focus on number, and the professor combine the engineering side, scientific, and the social side with migration. So we already have some explanation about how the model of depopulation generate from local population, and then migration model, and then the professor add some input, the modeling cost of migration, and then from that model we can know that how the policy should take, because we have marginal age, right, around 50 years. Well, now the next session, I would like to invite a participant online or offline here. Maybe you have any question or some interesting discussion with Professor Loring. Please welcome. Or maybe there are any participant from online. Oh, yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Professor Martin, for your nice presentation. And I have two questions, actually. The first question is that I see your model for migration of the people. But if we see in the reality, maybe there are two kind of conditions, different conditions actually. In the normal condition, maybe people tends to migrate to another area that have more attractive economic condition or facility. But in some cases, like the war, like in Ukraine or in Middle East, right? People tends to migrate instantly with massive number of people that migrate to another area due to the war or due to some kind of extraordinary things. Actually, my question is that how can you model this kind of two conditions in your modeling? That's the first question. And the second question is that actually we also have another approach, like using some previous data analysis, right? How is the performance of the mathematical modeling compared to the approach like using some previous data, like using machine learning or something like that? So that's all two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the first answer is quite simple, because I don't know if I haven't emphasized well, but what we are dealing with is the slow migration. It means that such migrations that are not instant, that happenings in a slow way. Obviously, when you have these fast migration, what we have experienced from Syria, for example, what happens right now in Ukraine, actually these models are not good. So they are not for them. They are for such cases when you have to deal with aging, you have to deal with slow out migration and low out migration. In that case, those phenomena happens in such a way that it is not really worth to develop control strategy, because it happens almost instantly, and we have to react almost instantly to such phenomena. But if we have the slow migration, then and we can make our measurement, then we have time to develop. Let's say how many money we should give. 30,000 is enough. We need 35,000. Actually, with these models and these strategies, these amounts can be these magnitudes can be defined. Or I don't know if you have a region, how many cities, how many villages should be equipped with high-speed internet, for example, and this is how it can be quantified. Related to your second questions, actually these models, what you have shown, actually I have shown the first that logistic growth model. Actually, it was quite an accepted model before the Second World War, and actually they were able to fit data on it. Right now, we are working on new models because actually the measurements show that those models are not good yet. It is why we are trying to add some extra terms into the model. It is why we want to modify these in order to fit those real measurements what we have from the United Nations and from those databases. Because the classic gravity model and the classic population growth model are not good. So it is why we have to make these modifications. Probably this won't be the best model for what we are, for the world in what we are living for them, but it can give some inspiration for the next model, and finally we'll get a good one. This is a, let's say, work in progress, this modeling. And again, what I want to emphasize that the model itself wasn't built for prediction. It was built for control design. So it means that what we want to get is not a 50 years tendency, but what we should do in the next 5 years, okay? So this is how, so the first one, it is a model for slow migration. The second one is a control-oriented model. So not for long-term prediction, but for short-term prediction with this uncertainty term in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Well, is there any question or comment on discussion? Can you join? Maybe from the online, I cannot check. Well, may I ask some questions, yes, Professor? So I'm interested about the simulation of migration and so on, which you show in the last part. How do you get the number of initial number of simulation, Professor?
The initial number
of simulation. You show that the last part, there are a simulation of a population.
Yes.
I mean, there are many numbers here. How do you decide the number?
So actually, what I've taken are just, let's say, it's a numerical simulation. I have considered some normal sizes. Let's say a village with 1,000 or 2,000 people who can live with it, and the population, the critical population size in these villages is about 100. Okay, if the population is less than 100, then it is not a viable, and the people are older, it's not a viable. So I have, so these were the initial assumptions during modeling, and these were such, and for the simulation, we also have taken the fact that these control actions, what we can do, are also limited. So we do not have an infinitely high control input. Okay, so these were the assumptions what we have made during the simulation, and this is how we got these results. So this is how we got. So and again, just to have an inspiration for you mentioned that you were surprised about the topic of this presentation. So so we have learned a lot of things we are learning a lot of things in computer science and systems theory and control techniques. And I really want to invite you to apply these techniques not just inside a computer. Just try to look outside, and you will realize that these models can be helpful even in the social science of demography and other things, because and we can serve such people who are working in, and not computer scientists, but they need in some sense these notions and this but they haven't learned at their university, and this is why this interdisciplinary research is very important, especially those that involve computer sciences.
Thank you. Is there any question from the audience?
Okay, thank you so much. So, thank you, Prof. Your presentation is very interesting. So, in my case, I also very surprised because actually we can combine about our social activity with concept control, like your presentation. So, maybe my question is a little bit about the technique. So, please show the slide number 26. To know about the decreases of population, we need to assume about the median age. So my question is, why we need to use the median age?
Sorry.
26. Nah.
Oh, sorry.
26. Nah.
Yes.
Why to know about the decreases of population, we need to make some assumption using the median. It's not median or average. It's. Thank you.
Okay. So related to this question, so this is quite normal thing that when the people is getting older, then they do not have the tendency to have more children. There are obviously exceptions. For example, I'm over 45 and I also have a 2-year-old daughter, but generally the young people are who accept to decide to have children, and after 40 or 50 we just get tired, let's say, and we do not want to get out at night. And this is how this, if you want to formalize it in some sense, if you take an entire population which has a median age, if this median age increasing, then the fertility rate of that entire population will decrease. Okay, so the entire population will have less children. Okay, and actually it means that it will affect this so-called critical population size, in a sense that if this median age increases, then even if we have, let's say, a population with 100, but all of them are about 20, then that will probably survive. But we have a population with 200 people, but all of them are over 60, then that population will probably not survive. So this is what we want to capture. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, our session time is up, and I would like to thanks to Professor Loring and then to all participants. Please give a warm applause to Professor Loring.
Thank you again.
Well, as a moderator today, I apologize if there are any inconveniences and then any mistaken during this session. Now, I will give the event to the Master of Ceremony. Ms. Nesty, time is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Eko. Thank you, Prof. Loring. Okay, may you stay on stage for a while? Yeah. Okay, everyone, please give a warm applause one more time for Professor Loring. Yeah, for Professor Loring Marton, please stay. We will present a souvenir from Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University. For that, the souvenir will be presented by Mr. Rizwan. Please come on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to our session. Now we move to the third keynote speaker. We welcome the following keynote speaker, Professor Hiroki Tamura from the University of Miyazaki, Japan. Mr. Rizal Setia Perdana, PhD, will moderate this session. Please welcome and give a warm applause to Professor Hiroki Tamura and Mr. Rizal Setia Perdana, PhD.
Hello, Professor Hiroki Tamura. Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Great. We can start our session now. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third keynote speaker session of ICOMIT 2022. My name is Rizal Setia Perdana, and I'm the moderator at this keynote speaker session today. You will be hearing presentation from Professor Hiroki Tamura, but before we get started, I will read the curriculum vitae of Professor Hiroki Tamura. Professor Hiroki Tamura received the bachelor and master engineering degree from Miyazaki University in 1998 and 2000 respectively. From 2000 to 2001, he was an engineer in Asahi Kasei Corporation, Japan. In 2001, he joined Toyama University, where he was currently a technical official in Department of Intellectual Information System. In 2006, he joined University of Miyazaki, Japan, where he's currently a professor in Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering. His main research interests are neural network and optimization problem. Now moving along to our session, please welcome Professor Hiroki Tamura, who will be speaking on the keynote speaker with the title Digitalization Technology for Remote Monitoring and its Application. Please welcome Professor Hiroki Tamura.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much. So my name is Hiroki Tamura from University of Miyazaki. So I will share my script. Okay. Sorry. Can you hear me? Okay.
Okay. We can hear you.
Okay. So it's my pleasure to have this opportunity to do the keynote speech. So I have been to Broward University once time. So Dr. Barian of Broward University, he took a doctoral degree at University of Miyazaki. Dr. Barian, thank you for giving these opportunities. So today I would like to talk about our laboratory research. Title is Digitalization Technology for Remote Monitoring and its Applications. As you all know, digitalization technology is improving the quality of life for humans. This video was research about 10 years ago. He is a muscular patient, and now he controls his electric wheelchair using his facial muscles, using surface electromyogram analysis systems. People with disability has a hope to go out freely. This technology that makes it possible. Digitalization technology thus enrich human life. People's life have changed dynamically during the COVID-19 pandemic. For better living in the post-pandemic era, we will introduce digitalization technologies that can be monitored remotely. In this presentation, mainly, we introduce the breathing and heartbeat measurement technology during sleep, and the biological motion measurement technology for human motor functions, and sound monitoring technologies by using AI analysis. In this presentation, we will introduce AI analysis monitoring technologies at first. Next is sleeping monitoring. This part is introduced by a doctoral course student in our laboratory. Finally, I will like to introduce the biological motion measurement techniques. So now is AI, artificial intelligence boom. Regarding image processing, we are focusing on this YOLO model, which is YOLO model is one of the deep learning model, one of the convolutional neural networks. This video is one experiment in the pig. This is a pig. In the pig farm were extracted, tracked, and their behavior history was measured and recording by using the YOLO technique. Depending on the YOLO model, the processing speed is fast, so it can be made in the real time. So it can be applied in various fields. Why is focus deep AI? So in conventional machine learning, it is necessary to handle future by humans. For image processing, it needs to the color informations and sharp informations and so on. But deep learning, machine learning can discover and learn the futures that humans cannot find. AI finds the good futures. So we apply this YOLO model to analyze sound data. So please show these figures. So I use YOLO model for heart sound analysis. Now is increases demand for the home health care. Therefore, I think that it is required to know the condition by using heart sounds at home. Now, a medical doctor can hear the sounds and judge the physical condition by using the heart sound data. I assumed that AI could do same judgment of medical doctors. It's a business opportunities. So we propose this method. This method is very simple. At first, record audio data with a digital stereoscope like this. After that, use a wavelet transform to make image the heart sounds. Wavelet transform, it needs the mother wavelets. Mother wavelets should depend on the target sounds. I have many experiments using the heart sounds. So heart sounds is Moret function is better from our some simulation results. Next, YOLO model. We use YOLO model. Run the abnormal data and the normal data. And the YOLO model output the matching score of abnormal and normal matching score outputs. The final judgment is we use the machine learning technique. For example, we use the random forest and support vector machine using the YOLO output matching scores. So we get the final judgment. So please show that this figure. Sorry. So please this figure. So This figure is a normal sound data. And the next, please show that these figures. This figure is abnormal patient sound data. So, just by looking at it, so it seems that is somehow different. There is no big difference in the future is these good figures. However, Euro ran this difference and it output the judgment results. So this is experiments and our simulation results. Heart sounds are recorded in these two places. We select the more bigger sounds place. We select the one place. After that, the sound data is uploaded to the cloud, and the judgment results automatically determined by using the AI server. If you record the heart sound about 10 seconds, our system can judge normal and abnormal with 94.6% identification rate. This allows you to get your condition while you're staying at home. And it's also possible to remotely inform the medical doctor. I think that this technology applies many fields. If the sound is not only the sound of hearing from a person, but also the sound machine or motor like this, it can be used as a judgment of a motor condition using the sound data. So it's a very simple technique. As first, sound data to change the image figures. So after that, we use the Euro model. So we get the normal and or abnormal data. We expect that this technology can be used for various remote judgments using the sound data. So this is our applications of using AI sound data analysis. Next is monitoring sleeping technique.
Good afternoon to all of you. So I'm Praveen Gunratna, a doctoral student studying under Professor Hiroki Tamura. So thank you very much, Professor, for giving this opportunity for me. And moving on with the next project, this is titled as a study on breathing and heartbeat monitoring system during sleeping using multi-piezoelectric elements. So when it comes to different sleep disorders, sleep apnea syndrome takes a priority. And when it comes to sleep apnea syndrome, it is predominantly, it is taken as one of the critical cases where it affects on our daily life. In that case, basically it can be diagnosed as it affects on our normal breathing pattern and often with snoring. So for identification purposes here, we have taken it as respiratory arrest for 10 seconds or more. And also it is repeated for 5 times or more. So moving on with the motivation part. So here we consider few key points that how this sleep apnea syndrome affects on our daily life and the society. And here we can see the as individual person, it affects on the oxygen concentration in blood, and it might cause myocardial infarction and the cerebral infarction. And also due to lack of sleep, it might tends to have many traffic accidents. And personal perspective, it can be snoring problems as well. And also in the diagnostic process, it is very much difficult to diagnose or notice by the patient himself. And it has been becoming a big problem. And even now it has been diagnosed with approximately 1 billion patients worldwide. So in that case, considering these key areas, it is very much important to develop home-based health diagnostic systems for diagnosing the mainly the SAS or the sleep apnea syndrome, and also other sleep disorders in the treatment of for the treatment purposes. So in that case, this whole process, whole scenario demands the development of non-wearable and also cost-effective home-based health diagnostic systems for continuous monitoring for the sleep apnea syndrome and other sleep disorders as well. So moving on with the different measurement techniques. When it comes to measurement techniques, the PSG or the polysomnographic approach has been taken as the gold standard or the primary approach. And also some actigraphic approaches have also been developed. So here we are going to give the pros and cons on the PSG system, and as well as we are going to suggest our system based on an actigraphic approach. So when it comes to PSG or the polysomnography test, it is diagnosed using different signals, different inputs. So ECG, EEG, EOG, and different airflow measurements, and so on. So here we have identified several constraints when it is using for long run. So as a wearable device, it is very much difficult to use it for long run. And also the patient has to be hospitalized to use the PSG testing for PSG testing. And also it is not cost effective for long run. So in that case, here we have proposed a system based on actigraphic approach. It is a bed sensory bed system, and the commercially available mattress or a bed embedded with piezoelectric elements detects the pressure signals, and we can come up with different measurements on the breathing patterns, and finally the conclusion on whether the patient is having sleep apnea syndrome or not. So I'm going to give basic pros on our system, which is it is developed as a home-based health monitoring system, and also a non-wearable device, and also most importantly, it is cost-effective compared to other developments which are going on now. So under the proposed system consists of 6 piezoelectric elements, and the placement has been considered based on reliable contact areas where an average person is in state of sleep. So after the acquisition of pressure waves or the pressure signals, it will be converted through going through an AD converter for the digitalization, and after that the feature extraction process is undertaken in the using a PC. So under the extraction of waveforms, after signal acquisition, the extraction of breathing and heartbeat waveforms are done using simple digital filtering process, and after that it will be followed through element selection and normalization of breathing and heartbeat waveforms using wavelet transform and fuzzy logic principles. And after that, it will go through a breathing and heartbeat count for the diagnosis of sleep apnea syndrome. So moving on with the results. So here our primary concern is to acquire the raw pressure wave signals and the extraction of simple breathing waveforms. And here we have given a small example where we extracted the waveforms, the breathing and heartbeat waveforms, and the fussified breathing and heartbeat outputs on a actual subject during his or her REM state. And also here, the video shows you that how the signal acquisition and the feature extraction is being carried out. And this figure is the breathing waveform, the extracted breathing waveform, and the extracted heartbeat waveform, and the falsified and the normalized breathing waveform, and the heartbeat waveform. This process, the system is capable of engaging real-time acquisition and the feature extraction process. So thank you. So I will again move into the professor.
So next, I introduce the locomotive syndrome. So in Japan, there are many elderly people who have a health problem related to motor function. Locomotive syndrome, we call it LOCOMO, represents about 20% of health problem requiring care in Japan. So locomotive syndrome, it means decreased motor functions. In Japan, it's judged by using the 3 methods. One is a 2-step test, like this, and the stand-up test, like this, and 25 questionnaires. So therefore, more safety and freely measurement method needs to reduce the burden of the subject and check the self-assessment of locomotive capability. So we have developed software that automatically measures walking speeds, knee angle, stride. Just walking 3 meters in the front of the Kinect sensors. We used Kinect sensors. So these 3 informations, walking speeds, knee angle, stride from Kinect sensor, we use input data. So machine learning use the locomotive index using the 25 questionnaires. We set that this data is the teacher signals. So we use machine learning, adaptive neural fuzzy inference systems. Input data is these 3 informations, and the teacher signals is 25 questionnaires. So this is a result. Sorry. So this is a result. Horizontal axis is 25 questionnaires. Vertical axis is output our software. So this result is correlated with R square is 0.52. However, human walking motions has a big variations. So our result like this. However, we did some health check events in many fields. So we had a generally good results and good evolutions in the events. So we have put the research results to practical use together with Japanese company for the health check. This is our product. It's used in health check. So please show that this is demonstrations. The Kinect sensors output biological motion in real time. So please show that this figure like this. So biological motion, we have the in real time using the Kinect sensors. Our software automatically outputs the stride and walking speed and the locomotive index value of health conditions. Please show again. So this is the locomotive index values. So his walking is green if he's safety, he's a normal. So now you can use the technique of open pose. Do you know open pose? Open pose is a biological motion extract algorithm using the deep learning. It is opened on the website. Open pose can be measured naturally without the needs for locations. Kinect sensor has a location program for sensing. Therefore, open pose is useful than the Kinect sensors. So we expect this technology can be applied many fields. For example, sports, healthcare, monitoring, and so on. So we get the biological motion using the camera in real times using the open pose. And to check the healthcare, we propose algorithm to estimate the locomotive index. So next is rehabilitations for the locomotives.
Thank you very much, Sensei. Again, so here I'm going to discuss about the project based on locomotive syndrome, and the project title is the design and development of an active ankle joint orthosis for a rehabilitation and assistive robotic exoskeleton. It is kind of a development of a robotic ankle exoskeleton. So when it comes to different individuals having various diseases and injuries, such as spinal cord injuries, strokes, and unilateral lower limb disorders, often reported with dysfunction, so impaired mobility in lower limbs. So here we are mainly considering on the elderly population, as well as people who are suffering from neurological and muscular disorders up to now. So in the regaining process of their mobility, the traditional rehabilitation process is being practiced. However, it employs or it uses the intensive labor for long run, and as the due to that, it should provide the patient with highly repetitive training to regain this mobility. So in that case, for short run, it has not been viable. It had not been reliable in the regaining process. So here we are going to introduce the ankle orthosis devices, which are the artificial wearable device that closely fitted with our limbs or the body, and regain the mobility and support on the regaining the mobility by using different actuators. So here we are going to discuss about different exoskeleton devices that are the upper extremity and the lower extremity and full body systems. And here, as an ankle joint orthosis, it is primarily based on the lower limb extremity exoskeletons. And when it comes to different development criteria, those are the LEDs are developed for mainly gait rehabilitations, locomotion assistance, and the power augmentation. So in our project, we have considered mainly on the gait rehabilitation and the locomotion assistance. So moving on with the development of the robotic ankle orthosis. So here we are focusing on the ankle joint, as it is having the trypan motion, and therefore it plays a major role in the locomotion or the normal gait patterns. So when the current developments are considered, it is most of the developments are limited to 1 degree of freedom. So whereas the healthy human is having 3 degrees of freedom in the ankle joint. So here this image shows the basic ankle joint movements within 3 different planes. And also importantly, so during the normal walking pattern or the normal gait, even though the normal gait is being carried out mainly on the sagittal plane, it also shows that some effect on the other planes as well. So that means the intersegmental movements passes through other planes as well. So it is very much important to give the freedom on availability, making it available for 3 degrees of freedom for the movement of the ankle joint. So this is the 3D model of the design that we considered in our prototype development, and it is consists of 3 degrees of freedom, modular power assist robotic ankle orthosis, with comparable joint axis, and all supports on all 3 degrees of freedom. And mainly the plan reflection, dorsiflexion, and inversion operations are actively supported, and the abduction adduction is passively supported. However, it is slightly supported with a spring loaded system. So this is the prototype that we developed based on the 3D model. And here we have considered mainly the range of motion values at the ankle joint based on different research inputs, that we considered. And also when it comes to mainly the anatomically considered, here the joint axes are placed, or the movement axes are placed in an oblique manner. So here we can see that the main 2 joints, thoracic joint and the subtalar joints, the axes are placed in a different oblique manner. So in this case, here we have considered this anatomical axis for the joint movements as well as the range of motion values. So under the control scheme, we have considered the controlling of the ankle orthosis according with the user's internal motion in real time. And also the ankle orthosis should be actively engaged in the controlling different ankle joint movements within different gait patterns, and when you are using it in different environments as well. So here we have used EMG inputs and IMU inputs as input-based development of an input, primarily based on and development of an input-based control scheme. So that's all about this project. So thank you very much for listening to our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your kind attentions. That's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Tamura, for your interesting presentation. Almost of your research is try to improving quality of life by digitalize the technology. And also most of the research is related to human body and connected with some sensors. Okay, now we move to the next session. There is a question and answer. Please, from the audience, if there is some question or discussing something, please. Maybe from, yes, thank you.
Hi, Professor. I am really interested with research related to the first presented research. Okay. I am interested with your first presented research that is related to the an approach to use an imaging technique that is YOLO to the sound. As we know that sound has at least 2 properties. The first is time domain properties, and the second one is the frequency domain properties. Is there any particular reasons on why we use this technique instead of using the original one? For example, we extract the pitch or something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So maybe your question means we use wavelet transform. So it is wavelet transform has time information, the frequency information, voice information has. So in this presentation, we will show that using the wavelet transform, just only one informations. But of course, you says that another the wavelet transform. So, for example, the first Fourier transform and another technique as I think that combines the voice input data. So to mix to use voice information data. So I think that it's better. So, but the Euro model is the image processing technique. One is the image process technique is so wavelet transform to make the figure is easy. We select its reason. So that's okay. This question, my answer is okay.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Tamura, for your answer. Maybe for the next question, is there from a student or from TechCom maybe? This topic is very related to TechCom. Yes.
Good afternoon, Sensei, Tamura Sensei, and Mr. Previn. Long time no see. So I'm Rosa. So I hope you still remember me. So I have interesting about the Previn research about the sleep apnea syndrome. Okay. So yeah, sure. in your research, you develop about the how to say sensory bed system. So my question is, the output of the system is only one signal. Is this right? The output only one signal. So my question is how to determine or distinguish between the breathing and heart rate signal. Do you apply some technique, or maybe you can detail explanation about this process? Thank you. Nice to meet you again, Previn.
Yeah, thank you very much, and long time no see also. So here, basically, initially we consider their frequency bands, and here mainly we are considering on the development of a simple system for this one. And in that case, here we consider mainly on extraction of those heartbeat and breathing waveforms based on their mainly frequency bands that has been considered based on many research, and the same approach or the same frequency band have been considered in the acquisition of the feature extraction process of the heartbeat and breathing waveform.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. This is maybe the nice reunion time for Mrs. Rosa and Mrs. Berlian for the laboratory. Okay, next question maybe. Is there any question? Okay, if there is no question, I have one question for Sensei. As we can see, maybe you use more than one sensors in this in some research, and how you handle multiple modality data and how to combine. For example, if we use images and then use audio format, so we have two different data modality, and how we combine correctly. Thank you.
So please show the sorry. Please wait. I prepare the slides. So please show this figure. Okay, okay. So this one route is using the wavelet transform to make the image figures. Like this. So this is the one part So using the Weber transform, this figure it has frequency information and time informations and amplitude. So, but we use another input. So we use, for example, first Fourier transform and multi-layer neural networks. So this output is combined. This part we use, for example, subtotal vector machine has your output and neural network outputs. So we think that it improves identification rates for these methods. Okay.
Okay, Sensei, thank you. Okay, maybe the time is up. Thank you very much, Professor Hiroki Tamura, for delivering this interesting session. And on behalf of Faculty of Computer Science, Brawijaya University, we would like to thank you for joining us today and see you again in another time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hiroki Tamura, for the excellent presentation. Thank you, Mr. Rizal. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, those are the agendas for this morning sessions. Now we will have a lunch break. We will have parallel session in our subsequent programs. The parallel sessions will be held online from 1:30 p.m. until 3:30 p.m. The link to the breakout rooms will be presented on the screen, and the schedule for the parallel session are provided in the program book. Please note that we will gather again in this room at 3:45 p.m. We will have a closing ceremony after the parallel session. Thank you very much. Dan kami umumkan pula kepada para mahasiswa, mohon untuk kembali ke ruangan ini pada pukul 1 ya, jam 13.00 tepat, karena kita akan ada kuliah tamu bersama Profesor Loring Martin. Baik, demikian, terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.